Welcome to the podcast where we bring on remarkable people to tell their stories.
I'm Paul Gilman.
I'm Daniel Lance.
And this is Pod Zone 1.
Mark Hammerstrom, aka Hammer, spent the first 18 years of his life in Metro Chicago with summer trips to Florida to spend time with his grandparents. His grandparents happened to be friends with the charismatic and longtime manager of the LA Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda. As you'll hear, Mark has fond memories of Coach Lasorda. After high school, Mark went from the Chicago area to Georgia Southern University, which caused a certain degree of culture shock. And after college, one of his first jobs was working for the cleverly named Bankers Bank in Atlanta. As a massive lover of sports, Mark has always been a hockey fan. Amazingly, he started playing in his 40s and loves every minute on the ice. Mark and his wife drove 8 hours from Atlanta to hang out with Paul and his wife. And during that visit, we had a chance to sit down and record the conversation. Here's Hammer.
What do you mean your relationship with Tommy Lasorda?
He's basically like a grandfather to me.
What?
My grandfather and him were best friends. And
did you ever tell me this?
I don't know. Maybe I thought I did.
I knew you were a Dodgers
Usually
fan.
Anybody who likes baseball hears the story. But when I was a kid, my grandparents retired in Vero Beach, Florida, where the Dodgers used to have spring training.
Right.
And they would fly me down every year. I was living in Chicago. So they would fly me down on spring break every year. And I would get to go down on the field, and I would get to meet the players and stuff like that. And my grandparents were friends with the Lasordas. When I was a kid, we went to dinner with them. We went to an Italian restaurant. I have a picture with me and my grandparents.
I
thought that's what all 8 and 9-year-old kids did.
Sure.
They go eat
with the
dinner with Tommy Lasorda.
World Series champions and the coach, yeah.
Yeah. But little did I know until later on, I was quite privileged and had no idea.
Well, Tommy's still around, right?
He is. He's 92.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw him?
I saw him, it was 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago. The Dodgers were in Atlanta playing the Braves in the playoffs. And we happened to be sitting on the club level. And I wanted to introduce Tammy to him. So I purposely kind of like between innings and stuff, I would go out and walk the concourse, hoping I'd kind of bump into him. I generally kind of knew where the opposing teams, executives sat on the club level and stuff like that. Lo and behold, in like the 7th inning, ran into him.
And did he remember you?
So yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. So I saw his security guard or bodyguard, whatever it was, and I said, Tommy Lasorda is close friend of the family. He's real good friends with my grandfather. Love to be able to introduce my wife to him. This, that, and the other, and they let us in.
That's
us
awesome.
Talk to him. A minute or two, just small talk with him, and yeah.
He's a cool dude?
Yeah. He's getting old. Slowing down a lot.
92 is not young.
Yeah, he's slowing down a lot.
But he was fun. I mean, at least his persona, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. All the Slim Fast and...
That's right. He did a bunch of commercials back
all
in the day.
kinds of commercials. Anything where he can make a buck.
Yeah,
I mean, the dude grew up dirt poor in Pennsylvania, so he...
Yeah, he's a tough guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything he has, he earned. He came from nothing.
Daniel, do you have any idea who Tommy Lasorda is?
No.
So if you're Mark's age or my age, plus or minus 10 years, you know who he was because he was a larger-than-life character, but he coached the most famous team on the West Coast for a couple of decades. He might have coached longer than that, but he was really a big deal for at least 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers went through a stretch where they had 2 managers in about a 56-year span.
That's crazy.
I mean, Walter Alston was there for 20-something years, and then Lasorda was there for 20-something years.
That's crazy.
They had 2 managers.
In 5 decades.
5 decades.
That's nuts. Yankees would go through 150 in 50 years. Yeah.
And then they had a broadcaster that was there for like 62 seasons or something like
Vin
that.
Scully.
Vin Scully.
Wow.
Vin's no longer with us, or is he?
No, he's alive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's still around. He's also well into his 90s. So I saw something interesting yesterday on the way up here. Vin Scully, he started calling games for the Dodgers when they were in Brooklyn, New York, before they even moved to L.A.
In the 40s,
in
right?
the 50s.
50s.
Yeah, he started. I think he started in the early 50s, and but he broadcast a game with Connie Mack, who was born in like 1862, and he also called a game with Julio Urias, who was born in 1996.
Wow. That's crazy. 130 years.
Yeah, isn't that nuts?
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So this dude wasn't a player; he was a coach. Tommy Lasorda guy.
Tommy Lasorda, he was a pitcher, but not a very good one, and he would probably admit that. I think his record was like 2-14 or something lifetime. Like he pitched maybe 2 years. He bounced around the minor leagues a lot.
Oh, okay.
Didn't have a very long professional career, but
then he was the manager.
Yeah,
of
and then
Dodgers?
he was the manager of the Dodgers, and he had a ton of success as a manager. I mean, he was the kind of guy like he could really rally the troops. I mean, he was just an amazing motivator. I mean, the kind of guy who, go run through that brick wall, and here's why I need you to do it, and you would die trying.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a phenomenal person, very jovial, very big-hearted, very generous. I mean, just very infectious person to be around. That's what I'll always remember. I remember I can still remember sitting in that Italian restaurant in Vero Beach, Florida, eating spaghetti with Lasorda's on my right and my grandparents on the left, and people just coming up. Just, oh my God, you're Tommy Lasorda.
And he's super gracious about the whole thing. Right?
Yeah. Wasn't a dick about it. Wasn't like, yeah, leave me alone. I'm eating dinner. I mean, he could have very easily just said, hey,
because he was top 10 best famous in baseball when he was manager. Yeah.
Even if you didn't know him from baseball, you knew him from any of the
commercials
TV commercials
he was
and whatnot. So.
And he was a big personality, massive personality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big time.
So, and you're a Dodgers fan because of that relationship?
Yeah. So I grew up in Chicago, and
Well, do you want to have an official start, before we get in?
Super official?
Well, hey, welcome to the podcast, and then you're like, thanks. I feel like every podcast should start with that.
Welcome to Pod 1. My buddy Mark Hammerstrom is here. He has driven all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. It is somewhere between a 7 and 16-hour drive, depending on the route you take. Took you about, 7.5 to get here?
Took me, about 7.5.
Yeah.
Just to be on the podcast.
Just to be on the podcast.
And to spend time with me.
Yeah.
And to meet you, Daniel, because Mark, who, by the way, goes by Hammer feels like he knows you on a pretty deep personal level because he's listened to every episode except the last 2.5 or so.
Yeah,
that's right. That's why you said you felt like you already.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why. That's the comment. So.
So you're a super fan, dude. Wow.
I pretty much am a super fan. I've been told that I'm probably second in terms of how many episodes I've listened to.
Do we call out the guy who's listened to all of them?
Yeah.
Roger Lee. If you're listening to this, you're the only one that we know of that's listened to every single episode. But Hammer's right behind you, so don't lose a step to it.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm coming for you, Roger.
Yeah.
I already like you more than Roger because he told me to stay in the background. So
Roger was being sarcastic, I think.
he was like, the podcast would be a lot better if Daniel just stayed in the background.
He was kidding.
Anyway, let's get on. So Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I met Paul in 2014. We both were working at the same company in Atlanta.
Nobody will figure out the name of the company.
Nobody will figure out the name other than maybe the handful of listeners who also work for same entity that we're not going to mention. But I met him in 14. I actually worked directly for Paul for what, 4-5 years?
Yeah, about 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Yeah, we based everything on height. I'm like a 1/4 inch taller than Hammer. That's how that works.
They just lined you all up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. All right, you're going tall, 6'3" and up. You guys go over here. Tom Greco.
Yeah,
you're over here.
Shout out to Tom.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tom.
and short people like Tom. Yeah.
Short round people.
Don't roast him too hard. He's got to be here to defend himself.
He was here last night.
He was here last night.
Oh, okay.
He came by to see Hammer.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I'm just repeating words he said and ways he describes himself. So I'm not saying anything Tom wouldn't already tell you.
No, he's great. So where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Chicago. Was born in Chicago and then actually lived about 45 minutes west of downtown Chicago. So out in the western suburbs. Spent most of the first 14 years in a town called Hanover Park, which is right next to a place called Schaumburg, which most people who know of any of the outlying cities in the metro Chicago area, they know of Schaumburg. And then right before high school, we moved a little bit further west out to a town called St. Charles. So yeah, it was like a lot of your other listeners you've had on. It was, growing up, it was, very different than it is today. We didn't have DVD players and we didn't have the internet and there was no Netflix and there's no cell phones and, heck, I didn't even use a computer until I was a freshman in college. So,
I didn't use one in college at all. Yeah. So
no laptops, no tablets. So, we were outside a lot. Just making up games and, again, a lot of just, you were out and your parents wanted you out of the house. They didn't worry about where you were. They basically knew you were at one of 4 or 5 of your friends' house and you were going to be home before dinner and,
So you're talking about making up games. One of the favorite games I've learned about on this podcast, it's been made up, is slow motion football. Did you ever play slow motion football?
I have not played slow motion football, nor have I ever heard of it until said episode. So no, that was a new one on me.
Do you have a game that you and your buddies made up that you remember?
So back when I was growing up, WWF wrestling was in its prime.
And it was an F, not an E.
It was an F, not an E back then. So it was Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Randy Macho Man Savage. All those guys were, Jake the Snake. That was the prime. So obviously, me and a couple of my closest buddies were, big into wrestling, and so we spent a lot of time, wrestling each other, in my parents' basement or in his parents' basement. But we took it to another level. So we made a belt. Like the WWF championship belt that they wrestled for every year when they had WrestleMania. And we made a belt, just paper and,
everybody knew what it meant.
Cardboard, and we colored it in, probably used tape and staples and whatnot. It was what we had at the time. And, but then we used to get I have a little sister. She's 3 years younger than me. And we were probably like 9 or 10 at the time. And so we used to tell my sister, we'd be like, hey, why don't you come stand over here? Or, we're going to do our wrestling and whatnot, but, we're going to jump off the top turnbuckle. So we used to get up like on the back of my parents' couches, like that was the top turnbuckle. Sure,
it's about the right height too, yeah.
Just freaking fly down and just nail my poor sister. She suffered so much abuse.
Why did she come in there? She should have just gone to the other end of the
She was very, I suppose she was very gullible. Like, my big brother would never hurt me, right?
Well, how many times did she let that happen to her?
Probably more than she should have. Two or three, but after the first time, I would have been like, "Nope, I'm tapping out. Like, I'm done. Fool me once, shame on me."
Right.
I mean, you see it all the time on TV, and they get back up and keep going. So
oh yeah,
you would think that you could just sail from a whatever onto somebody.
So one of my favorite things our favorite, stories or kind of made up games as a kid. We lived in like a 2-story house, and there was so you kind of walked in the front door and you had like a big living room area on the left, and kitchen was kind of straight ahead on the back, and then there was a staircase that went up to the bedrooms to your right, and there's probably 13 stairs or something that it went up. And I told my sister, I convinced her, I'm like, hey, take this jump rope, tie it around your waist, tie it in a knot, go to the end of the hall, take a running start, jump off the top landing, and in the air. Once you're in the air, it'll turn into a parachute and you'll just glide down. She's like, all right, great. And I'm down there with like a camera. And back in this was probably around 1980, maybe actually probably a few years after that, early 80s. So, again, no digital cameras, none of the high-tech camera, things, that you can do with your cell phones and stuff nowadays. I mean, my camera was like literally, you put a roll of film in, you slide this button over to advance the film until it was ready, and that's how you took the picture. You literally like slid this lever.
Yeah.
And somehow, or I'm probably like 8 or 9 years old at this time, maybe 10 tops. I convinced her to do this, and I go down there with this camera to take a picture of it, and I actually caught a picture of her like in midair, her pigtails flying, the jump rope, and her little dress like in the air. I mean, it's amazing. Of course, she hit the ground and freaking plow.
Did she not see that coming?
No.
She thought I was a parachute.
She was waiting for the parachute.
She was convinced the parachute was
She was
gonna
convinced the parachute. There was no parachute. So again, she figured that out the hard way. So,
but you got the picture.
I got the picture. I still have it. So, we have a good laugh about it. When we get together for holidays and stuff. They're like, you remember that time you told me to?
When did she first laugh after
It was
the
probably.
incident?
I think she was out of high school or college before she finally found the humor in it. But it's good. We can share a laugh about it now. So
I'm glad she found the humor in it.
yeah.
Did you play a ton of sports growing up?
So I played baseball and basketball growing up as a kid. Was really never good at either of them. I'm pretty sure I never batted 200 in baseball.
The Mendoza line, yeah.
Yeah. Don't think I ever broke 200. Led the team in strikeouts fair number of time. Also, so it's funny too, because my Pony League team that I played on, which is for 13 and 14-year-olds, we won the Pony League World Series in our district when I think I was 13 or 14. And I led the team in strikeouts and hit by pitches that year.
Did your coach maybe say, hey, scoot a little closer to the plate?
So does the 200, is that like you only 1/5 of pitches you actually hit?
At bats. The denominator's at bats.
Yeah, so number of times it got on base.
Okay, so 1/5 of the times you walked up to the plate, you actually were able to get onto one of the bases?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So never. I mean, I loved baseball. Loved everything about the game. And it's funny too, because I had a friend I met in high school, and I was never good enough to play on the high school team. I had a friend that moved. He was a year younger than me. Moved to Illinois from Nebraska. He was actually a wrestler, really good wrestler.
A lot of good wrestlers coming out of that part of the country, for sure. Yeah.
But he's also a good ball player. And, by this time I was probably like a junior in high school. So any ambitions of becoming, a decent ball player were, pretty much gone by this point. But, he took me to the batting cages one day, and he told me, he was like, hey, I can tell you're not watching the ball, And I remember my dad as a kid, he'd be like, keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball.
It just sounded like something people say.
Yeah, it sounds like something you say, right? Like,
yeah.
Go wash your hands. Like, yeah, okay. But I never really did it. And then this friend of mine, Steve, when he says, I can tell, like you're looking away, you're not keeping your eyes on the ball. Watch that ball all the way in, watch it make contact with your bat. And all of a sudden I just started crushing the ball in the batting cages.
Where was Steve when you were in 7th grade?
And I'm like, holy cow, this information would have been extremely helpful. Like
really, you really need
10
to
or
keep
12
your
years
eye on the
ago.
ball. I'm serious.
Like, I'm not
Watch it all
kidding.
the way.
I was actually, so basketball, again, the same way. I was always tall, but I was skin and bones. I mean, I looked like, if I showed you my high school basketball picture, I never played on the varsity team. I played on the freshman, sophomore teams and the JV team. But I looked like I was Ethiopian.
Do you think you were
skinnier
than Booney was when he was that age?
Yeah, it was funny because I heard him make this a similar analogy, and I was like, huh. I was like, I'd love to be able to compare those two pictures because, I mean, I saw the picture. I just cleaning out home office a couple of years ago or something. I came across the picture, and I'm like, geez, it's unbelievable. I mean, no muscle whatsoever, just a bag of bones, man, just all bones. It was crazy.
Paul showed me a video of him playing basketball.
It was like a 10-second spot.
Kevin showed me the video.
And said it, yeah.
And Paul was just, you were a little bit more of a heavy set dude.
I was also 35 in that, and Hammer's talking about when he was 15.
You were 35 in that video?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought it was like middle school Paul. It was just
I was skinny when I was in high school.
Big dude, just trucking people down the court.
Yeah, I was a grown man.
Yeah, okay.
That was not when I was 15. That's
all right.
funny.
I'll let that comparison go.
So were you dropping bombs from outside, or were you playing on the inside, or?
I usually played center and forward.
Okay.
So no bomb dropping from me. So it was funny. So I remember one of my most memorable games, probably memorable for the wrong reason, was actually playing against. Pretty sure it's the high school my mom went to. She grew up in a town called Villa Park, and they had this kid. Of course, this is in the early '90s, right? So you have the Chicago Bulls going up yearly against the Detroit Pistons, who were the bad boys at the time. And at that time, it was before the Bulls finally hit their stride and were able to overcome Detroit. So the Pistons, rather, were kind of had the Bulls' number. One of the guys all the Chicago fans loved to hate was Bill Laimbeer.
Oh, yeah.
Just dirty player, right?
He was good, too.
Yeah.
He was good.
He also went to Notre Dame, so I have several reasons for not liking him.
He wasn't a very
sorry
likable
to
guy
your
back
Notre
in the
Dame
day.
fan listeners. So.
All two of them.
Go Blue.
He's a Michigan fan, if you haven't figured it out.
I had to throw that plug in there.
Yeah, I needed that spelled out for me.
So I'm going back and forth with this kid, and we're just being physical, right? It was clean, physical basketball at first, and then it just kind of escalated. And finally, I'd had enough, and I just threw an elbow at the kid. And I got
at his head.
At his head.
Yeah.
And I got kicked out of the game. My parents in the stands.
Were they embarrassed?
They were. What was that all about? I was like, I'm sorry.
You reminded me of Bill Laimbeer.
They started calling me Bill Laimbeer. I'm like, oh, you can't do that. Clean it up.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I ran track in high school. I ran cross country actually as well in middle school. I just decided I hated running long distances.
It doesn't seem like a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's not, and there's no. It's hard to stay competitive and focused in cross country because it's while you're on a team and there's individual results and there's team results, but you're by yourself largely, right? And it's just I lost interest.
Yeah.
I ran track though in high school. I actually got my high school letter
Nice.
in track and field. I ran hurdles. So funny story about my high school hurdling career. So one of the track coaches was also the sophomore basketball coach. and he kept trying to get me to come out for the track team. And I said, yeah, all right, I'll do it. And it kind of wrapped up. In Illinois, we had indoor track and then we had outdoor track. Indoor track kind of started like right when you went back to school for the second semester. And because it's cold it could be cold until April or May up there, just depending. So you kind of start with indoor season and then eventually you go into outdoor. So I said, all right, I'll come out. And I think part of me, I did it because I was just trying to kiss his butt so I can get more playing time in basketball. So I was like, yeah, I'll
It's not a
do
bad
it.
move. Yeah.
I'll just do it. I'll stay in his good graces and stay, front of mind kind of thing. So he's like, all right. So I come out. He's like, you're going to be my He kind of looks at me, looks at my legs. He's like, you're going to be my hurdler. Like, all right. So in the 110 meter hurdles, the natural thing is to, you come out of the starting blocks, you go over the first hurdle, and then you're supposed to take 3 steps and then jump over the next hurdle. So you're always going over the hurdle with your lead leg.
Yep.
I couldn't ever get the timing down. I could not. So at first I was doing 5 strides because I was trying to always go over with my predominant lead leg.
You were short stepping it. Yeah.
So he was trying, as the coach, he was trying to get me to stretch that out, and he wanted me to get it to 3. Could never do it. Could never do it. I got down to 4. So I would alternate going over with
Wow, that's hard.
Yeah. So he even made a little joke about it. So when I got my letter my senior year, he was like, "In only 4-step hurdler I've ever seen in my life." So
Did it work?
I mean, it worked for me. Again, I was average. I mean, I wasn't great. It was something to do, mostly for me. I didn't take it real serious. Mm-hmm. But I think if I put my mind to it and I wanted to, I could probably get to where I could, get to 3. But I didn't really have anyone that kind of pushed me either. So, I just, like I said, I was just this is kind of something to do. Like I played basketball in the fall and early winter, and then, we had indoor and outdoor track after that. So it's just kind of something to keep me engaged, after school year round.
Keep the body moving.
Yep.
That's good. It's good stuff.
Very cool. So you moved to Georgia right after high school, right?
I did.
Yeah. Your dad got a job down in.
So my parents, my dad's job got transferred to Atlanta in November 91, and then they moved down in January 92. So I always tell people my parents traded me for a snowblower. They didn't figure they have much need for a snowblower in Georgia, so they bribed my best friend's family, whose name's also Mark,
Nice.
To take me in for 6 months so I could, at that point I was right in the middle of my senior year of high school.
Yeah, brutal time to move. Right?
Yeah, so, uproot me to Atlanta and go to high school and graduate with, a bunch of people you know for 6 months. Yeah. So I got to stay behind, finish out high school. And meanwhile, my parents moved and my sister moved down to Atlanta. And then I moved down basically the day after high school graduation. So,
and then you got a summer job. We went to college down in
got
Georgia.
a summer job bagging groceries at Kroger.
Yeah,
and
nice.
I basically went to. So I had my heart set on going to Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois, and
Is that Southern?
Central Illinois,
Okay.
right smack in the middle of cornfields,
Yeah.
part of America. Got in. Was pretty much, enrolled and ready to rock and roll. And then when my dad's job got transferred, I basically started looking at something closer to home. At that point in time, I didn't have a car. So trying to figure out how I was going to get from rural central Illinois to Atlanta and back and forth was going to be hard.
Yeah,
not having a car.
Uber wasn't a thing back then.
No Uber. So, it was either going to be, fly in and out of Chicago or St. Louis and then take a bus. So I said, I'll look somewhere closer to home. And I went down to Atlanta for the first time on spring break in March of 92. Went to look at Georgia State University, which is right downtown Atlanta, and then Augusta College, which is about 2.5 hours east of downtown Atlanta, out I-20, going out towards South Carolina. I knew 5 minutes after I got to Augusta College, I wasn't going to school there. Yeah. It's basically a commuter college. I don't think at that time, if they even had on-campus housing, it was very limited.
So it's basically a day school. Yeah.
It's basically a day school. Not a lot of activity after 2-3 in the afternoon when classes got out. And I also got into University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, and Georgia Southern. So my mom was wanting me to go to Georgia State because she was kind of wanting me to learn.
All very southern places for a kid from Chicago, right?
Yeah, all very different.
Yeah,
very different. My mom wanted me to go to State because she wanted me to kind of. It's right there. Yeah. She wanted me to kind of learn Atlanta and make it my home and that kind of thing. But part of going to college, part of that whole experience is going away and living on your own and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So I really narrowed it down to Georgia Southern and UTC Chattanooga. And even though Chattanooga is half the distance closer to home than Georgia Southern was, I picked Southern because it was in state. So I basically went there sight unseen.
Wow.
Had no idea what I was getting into. And you want to talk about culture shock. I went from...
Yeah, where is it?
So it is... it's in a town called Statesboro. It's about 45 minutes west of Savannah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's in deep southeast Georgia. I mean, middle cotton fields. And again, this was 1992. So Statesboro in 1992 and Statesboro in 2020 are two very different places.
Right.
It was a dry county back then. Just
Whoa.
not a.
Do you know what a dry county is, Daniel?
No alcohol?
That's exactly what that means. In the South, it was pretty prevalent through the 90s.
Dang, that's weird. It's hard to separate my notion of college from alcohol.
Yeah. So if we wanted liquor and stuff, we had to drive 20 minutes to the Candler County line.
Oh, you could just get across the county. Okay.
Yeah, and literally 200 feet after you cross the Bullock Candler County line,
there's a bunch of them. Probably.
There's a store. They even had a little drive-through. It looked like an old bank.
Yeah, we're so cool with you getting booze that we're going to give you a drive-through access.
Yeah.
But the county next door, you can't get anything.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
So they did healthy business.
I bet. Yeah.
At least until 1997 when they finally passed a referendum to allow liquor. So again, because it was a dry county, there wasn't a lot of places. Like there was no Longhorns, there was no O'Charlie's, there's no Applebee's, there's no Chili's. I mean, you had like the local pizza place.
2 to 4 holes in the wall.
You had a Chinese place. I think you had the typical fast food places. Your Hardee's and Burger King's and McDonald's, but you didn't have like real, many options to choose from when it came to like sit down dine-in restaurants.
Right.
And apparently a lot of these places had plots of land already kind of earmarked for when liquor referendum passed. So when it passed in 97, like the next day it was like Longhorns is coming to Statesboro.
Oh, wow.
Applebee's is coming to Statesboro. Ruby Tuesday. I mean, it was just, like a conga line of restaurants announcing they're coming in.
The county finally figured it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that point on, I mean, now they got like hibachi Japanese restaurants and stuff.
Now they're
fancy.
fancy.
Yeah.
Do you go back often?
I do. I usually go back down twice a year for football games.
That's cool. You get to see how much it changes every couple of years.
Yeah, and it changes like every year. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, I even said to my wife, last time we were down there, I was like, because not only has like the campus changed and the town changed, but like even our football team moved from 1AA, which is now called FCS,
Yeah.
up to Division I FBS. And when they did that, there had to be certain requirements for the stadium and stuff. So they put like a second level on the stadium, and they closed one of the end zones in and increased the seating.
There's big money in college football,
all kinds
right?
of stuff. I remember it was the first game I went to, and I was sitting there at halftime, and I'm looking around the stadium, and it's like, it sounds silly, but I was like, I almost came to tears. I'm like, I can't even believe this is the same place I went to college.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just changed so much. Buildings that existed, dorms that existed when I was going to school there don't even exist anymore. Actually, one of the places I lived, I think both of the places I lived on campus are gone. So, to your point, it's just constant change. And it's a good thing, right? I mean, the only thing that's, change is constant, right? So if you don't change, you get left behind. But it's always neat to kind of reminisce about, what it was like back in the early 90s.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost 30 years ago now.
Yeah. What did you study at Georgia Southern?
I studied finance. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Business Administration, finance with an emphasis in banking, and a minor in economics.
And one of the banks you worked at, we'll come back to Georgia Southern in a second, but one of the banks you worked at is my favorite bank name ever.
Can I say it?
I think you can.
Is it the Bankers Bank?
Yes, it is.
It is a cool name.
Is it still around?
It is not.
Yeah. So we're okay saying it. Yeah.
Yeah. So sad story there. They that was probably one of the greatest places I've ever worked. The culture, the environment, really, everything was just kind of top notch. Everything was just very well done. Great people working there. I had a team of people, again, to use the brick wall analogy. I mean, team of people I had working for me would do anything for me. So if I said, hey, run through that brick wall, they'd die trying. I mean, it just had great setup, very generous, and I thought I could see myself retiring from, a place like that. Like, I had no vision of, ever leaving that place.
This was late 90s into the early 2000s?
So this is like 2001 to 2006 into 2007.
I mean, you're working at a place called Bankers Bank. I mean,
Yeah.
If you're in banking,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to work at Bankers Bank?
Yeah. That's where I would go.
Right? If you're into banking, sure.
So for your listeners, the Bankers Bank was it was a correspondent bank. So we provided other services to small community banks that they didn't either have the capital or the manpower to do on their own.
So you were a bank for banks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hence the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so two things happened. One, my boss met the CEO of my current employer in, I think, late 2006, maybe early 2007. And they were a startup at that time. And my boss became an advisor to this company that where I'm still currently employed. And then in April 2007, he said, hey, I want you to have lunch. Come with me, have lunch with these guys. They got a bunch of questions about, at the time I was managing a portfolio of commercial and consumer credit cards. So they said they got a lot of questions about, how do you underwrite a business, and, how do you manage the risk, and this, that, and the other. So I said, okay, I'll come have lunch. He's like, it'll be great. They're nice guys, free lunch. I'm like, right on, sign me up. So we go, have lunch, talk shop. About 4 months later, they had asked my boss to kind of jump ship, leave the bank, and move over to this company. And for him, it would have been more of a lateral move. And I don't think he was really interested in making a lateral move, especially to startup. So he was like, hey, it's not the right fit, not the right time for me. But you should really talk to, kind of my number two guy. He's my right hand. I'd hate to lose him. You can talk to him, but I'm giving you a heads up. He's very loyal. So you can talk to him, but he's probably not going anywhere. Just giving you a heads up. So I go have drinks with the CEO of our company, and the one thing our CEO is, he's extremely entrepreneurial. He's a salesman through and through, and he had this business plan, and it wasn't pie in the sky, which is weird because after you get to know him, it's like, hey, we're going to be $1 billion in 4 months. Everything else is pie in the sky after that. But at the time, everything was just very methodical. I'm like, wow, this could really work. And he sold me, man. He had me hook, line, and sinker, and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And next thing you know, I'm gone. I leave the banker's bank.
Yeah.
And the second thing that happened was, so I think it was either 2009 or 2010. I'm pretty sure it was 2009. Yeah, it was 2009 when the last major recession hit. And a lot of the real estate developers, because mortgages got hit really hard, a lot of the mortgage companies and the developers who had loans with these mortgage brokers and whatnot, these developers started going bankrupt, especially on commercial like high-rise condos in the Florida Panhandle and stuff. Well, one of the things that the Bankers Bank did was they did loan participations where they would take these $120 million commercial real estate loans, and they would broker them with 10 or 15 small community banks, so they each got a piece of the pie. Well, when these developers started filing bankruptcy, it literally sank the Bankers Bank.
Oh, wow.
To the point where the FDIC came in and shut them down.
Oh, holy cow.
And I mean, I was like, wow. If you would have told me 3 years ago that the FDIC was going to shut this company down, I would have said, you're crazy.
Yeah, 09 looking back to 06.
Yeah. So, I like to tell our CEO, like, hey, I left this extremely profitable, very generous bank to come work with the startup company that, when I joined it, it was several years from becoming profitable and successful. Yeah. So it's kind of our running joke. It's like, I knew it all along. I knew that this bank was going down and your finance company was going to take off. I knew it all along.
And it did.
And it did. I did not know that, because if I did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. Or maybe I would, just have a different story to tell. But I'm not that smart.
So, Hammer, as a kid, you were playing basketball and baseball.
Yep.
And were you in your late 30s, early 40s when you picked up hockey?
42.
42, from Chicago.
From Chicago.
Didn't play hockey in Chicago, moved to Georgia as a late teen, and then you pick up hockey as a 42-year-old. How did that happen? And tell us about hockey in Georgia.
So I have been a fan of the game of hockey since I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I remember first game my dad took me to at the old Chicago Stadium. Blackhawks North Stars game. North Stars were in Minnesota at the time.
Yes, they were.
Been a fan of the game for 30 years. Never played it, though.
Did you skate as a kid?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
No. I mean, just, every once in a while we'd go. A couple times we'd go skate on, like ponds and stuff in the winter when they froze over. Or, a bunch of, when we were in high school, a bunch of us would go to a local ice skating rink and, but it was more about hanging out with, friends and stuff like that.
You weren't focused on the skating.
No. So two of the guys that I work with, they're, one of them, their son plays travel hockey, and started, I guess they had like a father-son, kind of scrimmage game after practice one time, and started going to adult learn how to play hockey clinic that one of the rinks they have in Atlanta offers on Wednesday nights. And then one of the other guys that we work with, another guy that you guys have had on your podcast, William, started also going to the clinic. And
he didn't grow up skating either.
No, he grew up in rural Georgia.
Yeah, no skating in rural Georgia back then, yeah.
So they were trying to they knew I was a big hockey fan. and they were trying to get me to come out. And it took them about 3 or 4 months before I finally caved in. Because, I'm like, geez, I'm 42 years old. Like, I can't break a leg or, something, right, break an arm.
Seems
right
dangerous,
now,
right?
Yeah.
At any age.
So I go to this clinic, and I come home. Well, the clinic at that time was an hour and 20 minutes. It ran from 7 to 8:20. And I think about 10 after, I get out there and I fall like 3 times in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So the guy who's running the clinic says, let me look at your skates. I'm like, all right. He's like, did you have those sharpened? And I said, no. He's like, you need to get your skates sharpened. I mean, I took the skates right out of the box, went right out there. I didn't know.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know. Yeah.
I'm like, no, I know I need to sharpen my skates. So he yanks me off the ice. The guy goes and sharpens them, come back, and now I'm skating like a champ. But I fell like 3 times in the first 10 minutes. I'm like, Jesus, I'm making a jackass out of myself.
Like, why am I here?
Yeah.
I'm getting bruised up for what?
And you know what? These guys none of them were like, hey, look at this asshole. He doesn't know what he's doing. Or why is this guy on the ice? Like, come on. Go play golf or something, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do when you're in your 40s. You're not supposed to take up ice hockey. You're supposed to take up golf. So, but they were all just like building me up, like, hey, keep your chin up, hang in there,
Super cool about it, yeah.
So that all happened like the first 10 minutes. So I'm off the ice for about another 10 minutes. Get my skates back from being sharpened and get back out on the ice, and I'm out there for about another 5 or 10 minutes, and we're doing these sprints and these drills and stuff like that. And I'm literally just hunched over on my knees.
I remember you telling me the next day about it. Yeah,
like I'm literally about to die, and I'm like, I look up to the clock. I was like, this thing's got to be about over. It's like 7:25. I'm like, oh my God, there's 55 more minutes of this. Like, I am literally going to die. So, I make it through. I push through. I come home. I mean, I've only been off the ice for 45 minutes at this point, not even an hour. I live like 20 minutes from the rink. And my wife's like, hey, how was it? Did you have fun? I think I made a really big mistake. I was hurting everywhere. And this is only 45 minutes after I've been off the ice. I'm already hurting everywhere.
You're already sore.
There's no way I'm getting out of bed tomorrow. Like, it was brutal. But next week I went, and I mean, I tell you what, like, I fell in love with it right away. I mean, I was hooked. After I got past the initial, like, pains and whatnot. I mean, like I said, I've been a fan of the game for 30 years, but I just absolutely loved it. I mean, I was hooked immediately. So I signed up for like this beginners league, and I mean, I just from there it just kind of took off. Now I'm playing in 2 different leagues. One that plays on Friday nights.
Oh wow!
And, yeah, so I absolutely love it, man. Just it's the greatest thing.
So forward skating to me seems like I could figure that out. I could eventually get to a good place where I'm forward skating. Forward skating with a puck and a stick seems a lot harder to me. What seems impossible to me is backward skating with a stick and trying to defend the guy with the puck. So are you able to backward skate at this point?
At this point, I finally got it. It took me a couple of years to figure it out. It's a difficult concept to grab, and it's a very different motion than skating forward. So it took me a while. I play usually one of the offensive wing positions. The defensemen usually spend more time skating backwards.
Right.
So I've never really had to, but it was something I wanted to learn just to improve my own skill set. But I think I finally got the hang of it. And hockey all around is tough, man. Like, it's the only sport where first of all, it's the fastest full contact sport.
Yeah, you're on ice.
It's the only sport where you have some other piece of equipment on your feet. So you're not, other than shoes, right? I mean,
right.
You're not on your own 2 feet. You got this other piece of equipment in there. You're on ice, trying to skate, carry the puck, look whether you should pass, skate with it, shoot. Meanwhile, you got 2 or 3 guys, bearing down on you. They're ready to kind of take your head off. It's not, like I said, it's not an easy game. It's not a game you're supposed to take up when you're 42 years old.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love it, man. And the funny thing about it is, and I don't know, like I said, I learned a lot of things about baseball and basketball too late. When I actually said, keep your eye on the ball, watch it all the way to your bat. Hey, when you do a jump shot, you bend your knees, bend your wrists. You're staying too rigid when you're shooting.
Right.
Once I started doing all those things, I became a much better basketball player and a much better baseball player. So I'm actually pretty good at hockey, it turns out.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like, and again, I don't know if it's because, I spent 30 years, watching the game, so I kind of, I understand the concepts and what. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not like leading the league in scoring or anything like that. But it's, like, I was never a good basketball player. I was never a good baseball player. But, I score from time to time in hockey. I get a fair number of assists. I don't, F up to, to the
Right.
point where, it's detrimental to the team. So yeah,
That's awesome.
Are you on the same team with William and Stefan and those guys still?
I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's your record this season?
So we are, oh God, I'm not sure what our record is. I think we're like 12-4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're actually really good. So this team was put together from scratch 3 years ago.
Right.
And there's kind of like a winter season, which runs from October through early May. And then there's a summer season, which usually goes from June through early October. We're actually still, because we had a 3-month layoff because of coronavirus, we're still working on the winter 2019-20 season.
Oh, wow.
We just resumed 2 weeks ago. But we put this team together 3 years ago. Mostly guys who came up from the beginners league. None of us had ever played together before as a team. So, we didn't have any chemistry. We had to kind of fill each other out, learn each other. We were 2-18 our first season.
In the beginners league.
In this open league.
Oh, got it.
Which is kind of a level up from the beginners league. So we were horrible, 2-18. Not a lot of fun to be had. Not a lot of people scoring goals. Got a little bit better the next season. I think we may have won 5 games. We lost a couple of players. It's not uncommon. So in the Atlanta Amateur Hockey League, you basically have 9 different levels, if you will. So there's basically lower A. Well, there's A, there's double A, and there's triple A. And then in each one of those, you have lower, middle, and upper. So you have like lower A, middle A, upper A, and then lower double A, middle double A. So,
Yep.
So, some of the better guys, move up. If they start to get really good. So we had lost some of our better players. We replaced them. We got even better the following season. I think we were kind of like basically 500, cracked even. And then last season we made the playoffs for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And actually ended up going all the way to the basically the championship game. The team we were playing hadn't lost in the playoffs at all. It's kind of double elimination.
Yeah.
We had already lost once, so we would have had to beat them twice in a row. They ended up beating us the first time we played them, and then we were out. So, but I mean, we come a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah. So this year we're in second place. Like I said, I think we're 12-4. We got 4 or 5 more games to go before the playoffs start.
This is the year.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
And you were off for a while, but everybody else was too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the way when you first started and everyone was being nice to you, even though you kept falling and all that, do you think that's indicative of hockey culture in general? Because that's kind of funny. I mean, it's funny that it's such a rough
brutal.
sport.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hear about NHL players not having any teeth, because that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
But do you think that it's a generally like friendly, accepting, welcoming community?
So I think there's kind of like two camps. There's some guys in the Atlanta Amateur Hockey League who are just phenomenal, great hockey players. You could tell they played, upper level hockey either in juniors or maybe even high school and college somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the guys that are more likely to be like, oh, look at this jackass. He can't even stay on his skates.
Mm.
Those aren't the guys that are coming to these kind of clinics, though. I mean, those are the guys that are so far advanced that they're playing in, other like stick, we call them stick times. They're basically like pickup games. But the guys who are coming to like the clinic where I started, they're either guys that, either they're new to the sport like me. A lot of them come over from roller hockey, I've found, and they want to make the switch to ice. Or they're decent skaters. They're not necessarily those AAA and AA guys, but they're better than most beginners. But they want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have all that context, so that's why it was a little intimidating for me to go out there. And I was like, I started falling. I'm like, oh man. But I didn't, when I didn't experience that, I started talking to people like, nah, these guys are just they want to help you. They want to help you get better. And at the end, and when it's all done, we're all going to go drink beer in the parking lot, and that's what it's all about. So I found that it's at that level, you don't get a lot of the when you take those serious guys out of the equation. It's different.
Yeah, and the guys that are teaching clinics, they want you to learn. It's not just about them saying things or having you do things. They want to make sure you're improving, and the best way to do that is to be supportive.
Yeah.
So
I got a funny hockey story.
All right, love it.
So I taught come home that first night and just in pain everywhere. And I think this actually happened probably about 6 months, between 6 months and a year after I started playing. I was at one of these stick time games. A lot of times on the weekends, if they have extra ice time that's not being used, they let the Atlanta Amateur Hockey League have the ice. Everyone pays like $20. You come out, and you play 10-on-10. Just kind of pickup game. And I was playing with, I think it was my first time playing with like AA guys, and maybe some like upper AA guys. I was definitely out of my element. And one of the guys I kind of knew who started out kind of, again, lower level, and he just really good player. He's moved up through the ranks. He was on the other team. And I knew him, we're friends and everything. And we collide. And we were both going for a loose puck, and, we collide. And I go down butterfly style.
Oh.
So I land on my knees.
That's not fun.
And my knees just shoot out.
They
in
splayed.
opposite
You splayed.
Splayed in opposite directions. And I was like, oh, I heard like a pop. Like I definitely knew I like pulled my groin. Like this isn't good. So I finished. I kind of like I knew I was kind of hurt, but I didn't know how bad. And a lot of times when you're hurt, you got there's like that initial shock or that adrenaline rush. So you don't really feel the full extent of it right away.
Yeah.
So I'm able to make it through the rest of the game, and I get off the ice, and I'm kind of limping, and like, man, my right side's hurting, my left side's hurting. I'm like, man. So I go home, and I'm like icing both my groins down.
Because you splayed. Yeah.
I basically pulled both groin muscles at the same time. So my wife comes home, and I'm sitting there on the couch, and I just got ice packs on both sides. And she's looking at me like, what the heck?
Kind of like Andy from The Office.
Yes, when he
the night before Jim and
pulled his
Pam's
scrotum.
wedding. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So I'm in pain, man. I've taken Advil. Like I've done ice. I soaked in Epsom salt in the bathtub. Like nothing's moving the needle, man. I'm in so much pain. So I'm like, I'm gonna put some icy hot on my on the inside of my thighs. Like that'll because when I get muscle pains, I put icy hot on, right?
And you had tried a lot of other things. Yeah.
Tried a lot of other things. Note to self. Do not put icy hot on the inside of your thighs because they are a little too close to something else.
To some sensitive areas.
To some sensitive areas. And I learned that the hard way. And holy cow, it felt like someone was holding a lighter to my manhood. The pain was so
It was
intense.
worse. It took your mind off the other man.
Oh, yeah. My groins felt great. I have never experienced pain and burning like that ever. And my wife is in the bed, and she's crying because she's got tears in her eyes from laughing. I am literally in the bed, writhing in pain. I grab my phone. I'm like, how do I, what happens if you get icy hot on your,
Yeah, because you can't wash it off. There's nothing you can do.
No, you can't wash it off. And, apparently I'm not the only person this has happened to. And if you ever need a really good laugh, Google that, because some of the things people have wrote, it'll make you piss your pants. I mean, it is some of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, there wasn't much to do other than ride it out.
Yeah.
A couple people were like, sit in a hot in a bath with cold water. And then other people were like, yeah, I tried it didn't work. And they're like, basically, you just got the next 30 to 45 minutes are going to be rough, and you just got to ride it out.
Yeah, you got to ride it out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was brutal.
Dang, and ride it out you did.
That's kind of funny, which makes me think of our standard question, Daniel, that you should probably ask.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. So
well, do we need to ask it? I guess for the 2 or 3 new listeners, we should probably ask the question. But Hammer clearly knows.
Hammer knows the question
because he's heard it about 25.
I'm going to ask the abbreviated form.
Yes.
So Hammer, would you rather be a stand-up? Would you rather try to be a stand-up comedian or enlist in the military?
So you're right. I've had a lot of time to think about this.
All 7.5 hour drive, right?
Yeah. Well, and the 22 podcasts or 22 episodes I've listened to. So I've had a lot of time to think about it. But I'm sticking. So, early on, like in episode 2 or 3, I'm like, I kind of like, if you had asked me that at that time, here's how I would answer. And it hasn't changed. But I definitely think I'd try the stand-up comedian route. I don't know that I'm a really good like storyteller, and I don't think I necessarily make people laugh, but I like to make people laugh. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of respect for comedians. I mean, I love going to a comedy club, and we have a place in Atlanta we go to 2-3 times a year. I love laughing. I think it would be really cool to work, kind of craft, hone my skills to try and make people laugh. And I know it's hard. Even some of the greatest comedians, you look back on documentaries or whatnot, and a lot of times you just think they were overnight sensations, right? 'Cause you didn't hear about them, and the next thing you know, they're on Saturday Night Live or they're
Johnny Carson or Jay Leno.
But there were years.
But there was a lot of years playing little rundown clubs and podunk towns where they probably failed,
and they weren't super funny at the beginning too.
Right?
In
Yeah.
a lot of cases, yeah.
Yeah. So
but
I
think
how long would your, because it takes years for some people. So like, what would be your give up point? How many months or years would you be like, all right, I'm not funny?
I think I'd at least stick it out for a year and a half.
Nice.
And then if I don't see some improvement or some positive feedback, then like, all right, I tried. Let's go do something else.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the military.
Well, I like the fact that you're kind of running to the notion of being a comedian.
Right.
We've had some guests who are like, yeah, I'll take the comedic route because there's no way I'm joining the military.
I don't want to get shot at.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it's both of my grandfathers were in the Army. My dad's father was in the Air Corps, Army Air Corps.
Yep. He's
a pilot, and then my mom's father actually fought in World War II. So, which I didn't know that until not too long ago.
Oh, wow.
I always knew my other grandfather was a pilot in the Army, but I didn't know my other grandfather was in the Army, let alone
In World War II.
World War II.
Wow.
But my dad never had the military, bug. And of course, at that time when my dad was 40, was born in 46. So when he was 18, you're starting to get close to Nam. And so there's, not a lot of people like voluntarily saying, yeah, sign me up for the military in the 60s. So,
All right on. So,
Yeah.
Hammer, one thing I know about you, you love music. You, your wife, my wife, and I went to a concert, had a couple of bands in Atlanta. We were at Braves Park, I guess at SunTrust Park.
Mm-hmm.
I love my wife, so I went. I like hanging out with you, so I went, but it's not my kind of music. It was definitely my wife's kind of music. I know your wife loves music from the 80s, and so I'm a little embarrassed to say that I went to this concert, but because I was with people that I enjoyed spending time with, I enjoyed myself. But I'll just throw this out there. Hammer and I, along with our wives, went to see Journey and Def Leppard. I don't know what you're laughing at, Daniel.
Okay.
They're amazing in concert. No, the concert was really good.
Daniel's like, who's Journey?
Yeah, I know. I know both those guys. I don't know why you'd be embarrassed though.
80s music is not everybody's taste. I was more of a 60s, 70s, like Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, and then I kind of skipped the 80s and liked grunge. So I wasn't a big 80s guy.
There's 80s music like Wham and George Michael and Culture Club, and then there's Michael Jackson, but then there's 80s rock. So
there was good music from the 80s. It's just the 80s was just kind of out there, like bright and loud, and not quite everybody's thing. And
was a weird time.
Def Leppard and Journey had some really good songs. So I'm being partially facetious, but it was not a concert I would have gone to on my own volition for sure.
let alone flown back to Atlanta.
Right, I flew to Atlanta for the weekend to go to that concert.
You also saw the Ava Brothers too, right? Was that
Yeah,
also?
yeah,
we did.
Hammer and I saw the yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love those guys.
Oh, come
Yeah, it
on,
was
dude. So here's the
phenomenal.
deal. So Daniel plays a few instruments. You play them for a year or two, and then you're like, I'm going to move on to another instrument kind of thing.
It's kind of been the pattern, yeah.
But you enjoyed the music for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Whether we'll call it bluegrass sort of thing, and I don't want to speak for you, but when you and I went to that Dodgers game, and we'll come back to Daniel's, the kind of music Daniel likes playing, and I think listening to. You and I, had we been to the Journey Def Leppard concert at that point? Or we at least knew we were going to go to it at that point?
We at least knew we were going to go because the Avett Brothers was in July, and I think that concert was in August. So,
But yeah, we knew we were.
We knew
we had plans.
we had
to go
already
to
had
the
it.
concert. So we're at a Dodgers Braves game, and Hammer's a huge Dodgers fan. I'm a big fan of watching baseball in person. I have a tough time watching it on TV, but in person, it's a very different experience. It's a lot of fun. Because I'm with Hammer, we're on the Dodgers side. And I think in like the fifth or sixth inning, they mentioned that the Avett Brothers are going to play at the end of the game. And Hammer and I had been to a couple of games before that.
Yeah.
Leave around the sixth or seventh inning, right? Because 9 innings can be really long.
time.
Depending
it was
on
a
the
weeknight
kind of game.
too. It was like a Wednesday night.
Yeah, we had work the next day. And so I think before we heard the Avett Brothers are going to be like,
Yeah,
we're gonna
cut
leave
out
it-
after the seventh inning.
yeah,
or
sixth,
whatever.
seventh inning, whatever. And he said Avett Brothers, and I looked at Hammer. I'm like, I actually really like the Avett Brothers. And Hammer's like, I do too. And I said, Hammer, did you know they were going to be here tonight? He's like, nope. I'm like, what a magical surprise for us.
I knew the Dodgers were going to be here, and that's all I cared about
Yeah.
at that moment.
And the
then
game was a good game.
game was a good game.
And then we got to listen to the Avett Brothers.
Yeah,
That's
was awesome.
awesome.
it was a great little show too.
Yeah,
They're
they
so
put on
good.
they're very good live.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, they're all like multi-instrumentalists, and their voices go so well together. I saw them up in Charlottesville at that what's it called, the UVA arena?
John Paul Jones.
JPJ.
They played in JPJ?
Yep.
It's a big venue.
Yeah, no, it was big. It was big. It was before the Rona,
Before the Rona.
pre-Rona.
Yeah, Hammer in pre-Rona times, how many concerts would you go to in a year?
we on average, I think we probably go to like 7-8 concerts a year.
I mean, you went to one in January,
We
February.
went to one in February, right before the Rona. We saw Hall & Oates in New York City at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
My wife's huge. My wife loves 80s music. Huge Hall & Oates fan. Never seen them. So she looks and she's like, "Hey, they're gonna be in Hawaii in on March 13th or something. I'm like, I just took you to Hawaii last year for our 10-year anniversary. I'm not flying 13 hours to go see Hall & Oates.
Right.
Like, and oh, by the way, spend about $8,000 in getting there and staying there.
Yeah.
No. So, oh, well, they're going to be in Madison Square Garden in February. I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. So a couple days go by. I was sitting around one Sunday afternoon, and I said, hey, when did you say Hall & Oates is going to be in New York? And she's like, let me pull it up. And she's like, February 29th. I'm like, okay. I was like, get on the Delta app and tickets. I was expecting, the round trip airfare from Atlanta to New York be like $350, $400. I forget what it was. It was like stupid cheap. It was like $185 or $205. I mean, it was something just stupid cheap. I'm like, that's doable. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like, and my wife's never been to New York City, so she's been wanting to go for a couple of years. So I said, how would you like to go to, see Hall & Oates in New York City? And she's like, are you serious?
In the Garden, too.
In the Garden,
Yeah.
no less. Which didn't mean much for her, but more of a big deal for me, right?
But after she'd been in there, though, it's a really unique venue.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we saw Hall & Oates at the end of February when we were in New York City, and then we had 7 other concerts on deck.
Oh no.
For this year that have been canceled or postponed. So
Frickin' Rona, man.
yeah,
That's cool. I was just thinking about something, but I forgot.
Bluegrass music. Were you thinking about bluegrass?
No. February 29th. That's a big deal. That's a big day too.
Leap Day.
Yeah.
Well, Leap Day and Rona, like there were parts of the American population were like, maybe we have a problem
That
here.
was close to the.
But it wasn't the
getting
majority.
really close. It was at that time. It was like Seattle and Washington State was like, hey, I think we might have a problem here.
Right.
And you started anecdotally hearing about it, places on the East Coast and and I'm not gonna lie, when we were riding the subway around New York City and whatnot, I'm like, don't touch anything,
Yeah.
because it wasn't we didn't know it was going to become what it did at that time,
Especially
and it was
in New York.
It was only
2-3
weeks after we left there that New York became like the epicenter for this whole thing, right? And I'm like, whew, man, we got out of there just in time.
Yeah.
So it was a good time.
So you like building concerts into your regular routine?
Yep. I'm a huge sports fan, huge music fan.
So the Rona's been killing you, dude.
Rona's totally killing me. I've already not been able to go see the Dodgers. They were supposed to come to Atlanta in June. So I missed out on, it's my one chance to see them play.
It's one series a year,
They
right?
come here, they come to Atlanta rather for one series a year for 3 games, sometimes 4. I hit all 3 games because it's the only time I get to see them live.
Right.
I've had 7 concerts, just whacked. So,
Man.
it's it is what it is. But it sucks.
Yeah.
I love going to listen to live music.
And it kind of feels like it's lost time too. I mean, we're not just going to be able to repeat 2020 and next year.
No, it's the 2020 just feels like a throwaway year. It just we're just going to look back on it and it's like, well, I didn't really accomplish anything that year, and we just kind of existed. So
Yeah, other than my son graduating high school, I'm like, what has the Gilman family done this year? It just kind of just made it through, made it by, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's been a weird year.
Super weird. All right, so you're a Bears fan. Bulls?
Yep, Bears, Bulls,
And Dodgers. We're not going to go White Sox or Cubs. You're clearly a Dodgers fan.
Yeah.
So if
Blackhawks.
we'll throw the Blackhawks in there. If you could pick one of those 4 to win a championship next, which one of those 4 do you want to see win the championship?
The Dodgers.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
The Dodgers. For a couple of reasons. So the Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups in a 6-year period, in the mid 2000, from 2010 to 2015. Blackhawks were just dominating at that time. So I've got a taste of that. The Bears would love nothing more than for them to get another Super Bowl.
34 years, right?
It's been a long time, so they're a close second. The Bulls, had a good run not that long ago. six championships in 8 years, and
should have been
still
eight.
a little
Should
bit
have been
bitter that it should have been 8-8, but yeah, it is what it is. But it's been a long time. It's been since '88 for the Dodgers, and we had it in 2017.
Yeah, totally.
Got robbed by your team, no less.
What happened in 2017?
So,
oh God, I'm gonna have to listen to some shit here.
Paul is an Houston Astros fan.
I am a very proud Astros fan, but maybe not so proud the last couple of years.
And I'm a Dodger fan. And at the time, they were pretty unlikely teams to have made it to the Met in the World Series that year. They both had really good seasons, but Astros don't exactly have a long, history of success or winning. So,
yeah.
But they had a really strong core group of young players that just studs. They had a phenomenal season. Dodgers had a phenomenal season. They ended up meeting in the World Series. So I'm working for Paul at the time. So we just had so much fun. We were watching the games together. At one point, we were happened to be in northern Kentucky at one of our other sites for 2 of the games. And the one game, it was just back and forth for 9
It was an
innings.
amazing game. That was an awesome game.
I mean, Houston would hit like a 3-run home run. Paul's in the bar going crazy. I'm like, it's over. Paul's just like, Dodgers are coming right back. I'm like, no, I'm negative Nancy.
Okay.
I'm the reverse.
Like,
I'm
it's done,
reverse
it's over.
psychology.
You're,
I
you're
think
in
you
the
are too.
you're in the fetal position.
Yeah. Once again, I'm in the fetal position. So, of course, next, half inning, the Dodgers come to bat, and first guy gets, walks, and the next guy gets a double, and, next guy pops out, the runners advance, and then the next guy, boom, 3-run bomb. Holy crap, we just tied the game up.
And I went from being jubilant to like, oh, crap.
And now I'm the one in the lobby of the hotel just hooping and hollering, and I'm like, hey, give me another beer, more bourbon. And the game went into extra inning. I think it was game 6.
It went back and forth 4, 5,
the game
6
was
times.
back and forth, and then it goes to extra innings. And even in extra innings, I forget how many innings that game went. But the whole series, the series at its best of 7, the World Series. The series went the full 7 games, and the Astros ended up winning in the end. There was a lot of scuttlebutt at the time.
I do remember hearing about this.
2 of the Dodgers pitchers, one whom was a mid-season, July 31st trade line acquisition, a guy named Yu Darvish. The other guy is Clayton Kershaw, and there's rumors, scuttlebutt going around that they were like tipping their pitches. I'm like, Clayton Kershaw has won like 2 or 3 Cy Young awards. The dude is one of the greatest left-hand pitchers of all times. There is no way he's tipping his pitches.
And that's just not who he is. Yeah,
it's not who he is either. He's too good for that to happen. So a couple of years, fast forward, and now we found out that, the Astros were stealing signs and banging on drums and allegedly wearing wires and all this crazy stuff. So I have a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth just because that was such a great World Series. It was so entertaining.
Did they get
even if you weren't
title?
a fan of either one of those teams? It was like just watching it. It was just so entertaining. It was gut wrenching as a fan.
Yeah.
And the problem is, for me as an Astros fan, look, we'll never conclusively prove it, but when the talent is that amazing and that comparable, any edge might tip the scales.
Yeah.
And probably did. Once again, we'll never know. And I'm like, wow, your team was so good. If
Yeah.
you're an Astros member of the Astros organization, the team is so good. Why screw around with
Yeah.
it? And I get that cheating in baseball, go back to 1919, guys doctoring baseballs as pitchers, things in their back pocket, things in their hats. I mean, but it's still not fully acceptable to do that sort of thing. And so, great, you tried to cheat and you got caught. Like, stop it. This should be a pure game. And if you're the Astros, why do you want to do that and potentially win and then have it come back on you later? Like, it just
tarnish it.
The fairness thing is one thing, but the level of stupidity. Like, why do it in the first place? I'd rather lose than win that way.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that the team that I've rooted for since the late 70s would pull that crap.
Yeah.
Do they still count, or did they get it?
Technically, it
title
still
taken?
counts, but they probably should get their title taken. And I'm saying that as a pretty big fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Dodgers should probably have that championship, but it's never that simple because you can't conclusively prove anything, and there's a lot of money at play. And
Yeah, so the Dodgers last won the World Series in '88, which was also October 15th, 1988, gave me one of my greatest memories as a sports fan ever. Kirk Gibson's
Game 1, yeah.
only at bat in that entire World Series.
Yeah, and I remember it. I watched it live, man. It was amazing.
I do too. That's one of those moments where I can remember. I can't remember what I did yesterday. I can't remember what I did last weekend. I could barely remember 2 hours ago, but I can remember like my surroundings, where we were, like when that happened.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of the greatest moments of my life, aside from marrying my wife.
Yeah,
And which I'm obligated to say.
Gibson had won a World Series with the Tigers in '84, and he was a phenomenal athlete, prime of his career. By the time he made it to the Dodgers, he was still a good ball player, but he was on the other side of
his
prime, and he was injured.
Yeah, so he had really bad knee injuries, and he basically had one at bat. He came in the ninth inning as a pinch hitter
Against the closer, a really good
against
closer.
Dennis Eckersley, one of the best closers game of baseball, and just Dodgers got a guy on base, and he just drills. He's down, I think, in the count. Like he was down at one point, 0-2, no balls, 2 strikes. I think he evened it up, and he just jacked a home run into the right field bleachers.
And it was in L.A.
In
and
LA.
the place went nuts.
Whoa.
If you go back and watch it, like on YouTube or something, back in the 80s and even into the 90s, Dodgers fans always caught a lot of crap for showing up to the games late and leaving early because it was the kind of California thing to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can see, like, if you look at the video of that home run, you can when the ball lands in the stands and the place just goes berserk, you can see like the brake lights of cars like stop, and like they were leaving, and then they knew something big happened. They kind of like stopped and were like, "Whoa, what?"
Oh man, they missed out.
Yeah,
Missed out, but there was such a noise
From the stadium.
Yeah, that it caught people in traffic. It caught their attention. It was amazing.
Cool.
Well, very cool, Hammer. This has been fun. We've been going about an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer. Thank you so much for coming to Richmond. I'm glad we got to do this in person. Glad we could talk about your story. Anybody you want to talk about real quickly before we end the recording? Like, you don't tell everybody this, but you have a couple of granddaughters in your life, right?
So I'm married for the second time. I got it right the second time around. Got married not super young, but young the first time, and it lasted about 7 years, and I just realized I wasn't happy, and I realized life is really short, and just kind of going through day to day unhappy. There's just no way to go through life. So I ended it. Met my current wife. We were actually working at the Bankers Bank. Another plug for the Bankers Bank. And she had also been married before. She has a son. When we started dating, he was 13. When we got married, I think he was 14, 15. So, I'm coming into his life as a stepfather when he's a teenager. That's just, a hard time to come into anybody's life. Because when you're a teenager, you don't want to be told what to do. You don't want to spend time with your parents,
especially by a guy you just
stepdad,
met a couple of years earlier.
that you don't know. And so that was definitely hard. That was a big adjustment for all of us, really, not just for me. But I love him like he's my own son. He got an early start on being a father. He was 18, so I was 37 when we found out, and 38 when my granddaughter was born. So I was kind of like, I didn't think I don't know of too many 30-something year old grandparents. I'm like, it's got to be some kind of record or something. But I've since learned out it's not quite as uncommon as I thought it was, but it's definitely a little uncharted. But in hindsight, man, greatest blessing in the sky. I mean, I love that. Her name's Emma. She's 8 years old now, and I treat her like she's my own child, the child I never had. She's got me wrapped around.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'd do anything for that. I think I've only told her no, like, maybe once that I can remember.
Yeah.
She pretty much, gets what she wants. I mean, I love that child. So, and then we just found out that he actually has another little girl. She's 3. With another girl that he was dating after his first marriage ended with Emma's mother. We didn't know. We kind of suspected that there may be another grandchild floating around, but they had a really nasty breakup, and he basically told his mom in so many words to stay away and not to intervene, and so she kind of respected his wishes. But then she reached out to him earlier this year, right before the Rona, and we got to meet our other grandbaby. So
and the grandbabies got to meet each other because I
got
visual evidence of that.
Yep.
Cool.
So good stuff, man.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Yeah,
really appreciate your time.
This was great. I had fun.
If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to subscribe through whichever app you're using. To share your thoughts, head over to our website at podso1.io, and there you can comment on episodes or send us feedback directly. Thanks for listening.